So we're going to be talking about a couple of things today, FMPerception, and then a new tool that is coming out very, very shortly and is currently in beta called FMComparison. My name is Dave Ramsey, FileMaker developer since '94, and over time I've worked in a bunch of different languages and a bunch of different platforms. These days, most of my stuff is C# and JavaScript, and you'll see why in a little bit. And yes, the line at the bottom is true. I am really, really bad at mountain biking. So FMPerception is a tool to help you understand what is going on in a FileMaker system. My personal experience was I can remember everything that I did in a system for maybe 72 hours. And after that, things start getting a little fuzzy. I've got 98% back to about a week and 90% back to about a month. And then after that, it starts falling off very quickly. And so what FMPerception is designed to do is give you the ability to quickly get the answers to how an aspect of your system is working based on the latest and greatest, most current code of your system, and then let you get back to work. And we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. It is published by Proof+Geist, but I'm the guy who wrote it. So because I'm trying to talk about two completely different applications with different workflows, I'm going to go right into demo, and we're done with slides for a bit. So let's go FMPerception. And so I pointed at the summary file for a DDR. I've already exported this one, so we don't have to see that part. But this is the import process. Ready? Done. Okay, that's the complete import process. And basically it does this two ways. One, it's doing on-demand parsing of the XML. So that part just loaded the XML into RAM and stopped and waits for you to tell it what you're interested in before it starts digging into the XML to try and find you the answer. And the second piece is that it uses native code to do this parsing. This is not a FileMaker application. This is a native Swift application. It's about 45,000 lines of Swift. The Windows version was rewritten from the ground up in C# for .NET. And so that's about 55,000 lines of .NET. So now that I've opened this system, I can start drilling in. And so show me a list of the tables. Here's all the tables. Now, until I clicked tables, FMPerception didn't know anything about the tables. But as soon as I clicked on it, it went to the XML, got the answer, and brought it back, including all the rest of the supporting data. So I can drill into, say, a particular table and say, show me all the fields in that table. And that's how long it takes. Some of the things that you might ask it a question for can take an extra second or two. So I can go and say, here's this status field. I want to know what layouts it's on. There's every field, every layout that this field appears on physically and its context. So if all I needed to do was find out what layouts the project status field appears on, so I can go in and make sure it's wide enough because a new value was added to the drop-down list or something like that, I'm done. I'm out of FMPerception, back into FileMaker and doing my work. That loop there is the core of FMPerception's functionality. It's what it's optimized for. Get answer, go back to work. Not, I'm going to spend 2.5 hours looking through FMPerception trying to figure out what I should work on. I know very few FileMaker developers who don't know what they should be working on in their system. They generally need, okay, I know what I need to work on, now how does it work? So if I wanted instead to see every single reference to this, now it has to go out and parse basically every single part of that XML to find where it's used in scripts, other field references, layouts, layout calculations, privilege sets, any of that stuff. And here's the answer. Here are the 57 places where this is referenced. Here's a calculated field. Here's portal definitions. Here is a value list. Here's a summary field definition. These are relationships that reference it. And these are text objects on a layout that use it as a merge field. Done, back to work. It publishes to you basically all the kinds of information that you would expect. So for example, I can look at the layouts in a folder structure. So this is the layouts hierarchically, the way you've arranged them. But most of the time, I want to look at all the layouts at once, just in a flat list. And that's what layouts flat is. It removes all the folders and just flattens it into one nice list of layouts. And so I can sort these by the number of layout objects that are on the layout. Here is my most object intensive layout. And I can drill into it and say, show me all the layout objects. And now I get a whole bunch of information about these things. Now, I patterned this off of FileMaker's table view because I really like FileMaker's table view for looking at large chunks of data, being able to sort by columns and find things that deviate from whatever's expected. So, you know, I can look and say, okay, well, what table occurrence are all of these fields based off of? And just scroll down the list, and there's all the fields are all based off of things that are in, because of the naming convention, I know these are in the same tog. There's the T16 tog, and that's what the naming convention for this system tells me. I can look at things like which of these objects, which of these fields are an unstored calc placed on the layout. So the moment you view this layout, all of these calculations are being run. You know, there's some fairly complex logic going on here to surface just the information you need. And if you really want to optimize for a particular task, all of these columns are reorderable. So I could say, okay, here's the object, and that's the unstored calc, and here is how many different relational steps away that object is from the base TO of the layout. So anything that's 0 is based on the TO, the same TO that the layout is based on. 1 is 1 step away, 2 is 2 steps away. So how many steps away? Okay, 2. If one of these said 15, I've got an opportunity here to optimize my layout's performance. I can put in a special branch of the graph to get to the end of that list more quickly, that kind of thing. Here's another fun one, which is calculations. This is the 337 calculations that run when you render this layout. Not necessarily all at that moment, because there are all sorts of different rules on which calculations run when. But we have things like, here are, let's put the calc type over here. So here are conditional formatting calculations. Actually, let me just sort by that. So we've got chart stuff, tooltips on our buttons, titles on popovers and tab panels, buttons that do, expand that out a little bit. Okay, the calculated script parameter is a calculation. Portal filter, placeholder text, all of these things running. And being able to look at these calculations is really helpful, because we're all really used to doing that thing where you copy a block of fields from one layout and paste them into another, and then double click on each one and change the table occurrence, and double click on the next one and change the table occurrence. But is that every single relational thing in those objects? What if they had conditional formatting, and that conditional formatting was based off of a different table occurrence? Did you fix the hide condition? Did you fix the script parameters on a button? All of these things are places where your system can break, and they're actually really hard to hunt down. So there's the there. Let's go look at scripts. So I can do the same sort of thing. Like, let's say, okay, show me the longest script. Here is my longest script. We can see that it has 23 inactive steps. So these are steps that have been commented out. If I sort by that, I can see I've got a 166 line script with only 37 active steps. Now, if a junior developer has turned this into me, I'm pushing it right back and saying, hey, what's the deal? Clean this stuff up, it's cruft. You know, how long will it take you in general to identify these kinds of problems without a tool like this? And this will surface them for you very nice and quickly. It's great for code reviews. Let me look at one in particular. So this just filters the list currently by name. And I want to look at this particular script. Now I can see the complete text of the script over here. That's not a small one. Or I can drill in and look at them this way where each one is kind of called out. But I want to go back here and I want to see how this script fits in with other scripts. And that's the call chain diagram. And so what this does is it renders a little wireframe of the flow starting from this script. Where does everything go? What can get called and what do those things call and what do those things call? It's really helpful for those on file open script steps that are run by trigger that call 10 other scripts that each call 5 other scripts that call 2 other scripts. You know, I've drawn this diagram by hand 50, 100 times over my career. I didn't want to have to draw any more of them by hand. There's some extra little symbols you can get around here. For example, if there is a folder icon next to one of these scripts, that script is actually in a different file than the main script. So if the script is branching through multiple files, you can actually follow it in the diagram. And if any of these scripts runs with full access privileges, you get a little gold star next to it. So you can see when you've got some kind of privilege escalation going on in the process. These are all also navigable. So if I click on, let's say this one right here, this print setup, here is the script there. It's just like I clicked on it through a search filter. So I can redo the call chain diagram from the perspective of that script. And this one is a leaf script. It's always at the end of whatever chain it's in. So you can find a thing and then look at it from a different context and then change the context until you find the context that really helps you understand what's going on. And then with the objective of getting back to work and doing stuff. Here is, I'm going to jump through some of these because I've got limited time. I can do like 2 hours on this product and I've got about 30 minutes. So this is slightly condensed. You know, here is every single FileMaker script step and how many times it's called. So if I want to look here, we've got a bunch of comments. We call perform script 2,500 times. Now, this includes not just the places in scripts where we run perform script, but any button that runs perform script is also a place that does that. So if a button calls go to related record without calling a script, it will show up in this list. So I get, yeah, here's a whole bunch of buttons that directly call go to related record. We can do the same thing with standard functions. So this is fantastic when Claris changes the performance of a particular standard FileMaker function from one version to the next, and you have to go find every single place in your system that runs this function. You can identify them very quickly and easily here. You know, here's all the places where we used filter values. Done. Custom functions. So we can, here we got the number of times each one is used. Now, just because these say 0 doesn't mean they are unused. It just means there are no references to that. So if we're using the evaluate function to evaluate a string that contains a reference to a FileMaker custom function, FMPerception can't find that. None of the DDR analysis tools can. But for any place where you put a reference to this function in a normal calculation, this will find it. So let's go ahead and look at this particular custom function. Now we can see that this function calls two functions, one of which is itself, it's recursive. And it's called by two custom functions, one of which is itself because it's recursive. It would be called from either end depending upon where you looked at it from. But what I really want to do is kind of spider up and down the call chain and find all the custom functions that have to move together. How many of us have ever moved a custom function from one system to another and it broke because it was dependent upon another custom function that we didn't move at the same time? Well, that's the function family. So the function family goes out, looks up and down the call chain, and figures out every function that has to move as a unit for none of their definitions to break. Now, in a perfect world, I could pick these up and drop them directly in a FileMaker. And actually here, I can select them all, right-click, and say copy for FileMaker. And it loads it into the clipboard, just like if I had copied these things from FileMaker itself. So I can then paste all four of them directly into a system, and all of their definitions will come over just fine because none of them have dangling references to some other function that I missed. This copy and paste trick works from FMPerception in anything that FileMaker supports copy and paste for. So tables, fields, scripts, script steps, layout objects, custom functions, value lists, and the custom menu tiers. 3 different kinds of custom menu objects. So in many cases, if you need to recover something or migrate something from another system, it's easier to do it from FMPerception to FileMaker than from FileMaker to FileMaker, because you can drill right in and get it, and it doesn't require that you close, for example, field definitions to go to another file to go grab that field definition and copy a particular one. You can keep your FileMaker system open where you're pasting in field definitions and do all your copying out of FMPerception and slam them in all at once. Here's all the global variables in the system and how many times each one is referenced. So if you've got that situation where you've got a global variable and you know you set it over here, and when you went to read it over here, it had a different value. Well, where are all the places where this global value is being set? I can just double click, and here's the different places where it's being talked to, read from or written to. Click right here, and it's right there. That's where the reference to it is. Relationships, predicates, table occurrences, accounts privilege sets, blah, blah, blah. Themes. Here's an interesting one to point out if I can find a really good reference. Let's look at custom styles. Here we go. So I can see the number of layout objects that apply this particular style, each of these styles. Okay, so there's 537 objects that have this text block small. One gotcha. Okay, so down here are zeros. These are things that don't have this style applied to them. But watch out for these. There's actually a description over here in the sidebar. But the problem is that the FileMaker DDR does not contain any information whatsoever about layout parts. I don't know which parts of a layout are headers, footers, sub-summaries, anything like that. And so because the parts aren't in the DDR, they also don't have the part style references. So I'm telling you this thing's unused, but I'm also telling you I'm lying. I have no idea whether this thing is being used or not. And nobody else can either. This is a limitation of the source data, the DDR itself. That information is in the new XML, the XML v2, the save a copy as XML. And so in a later version of FMPerception, we're going to be supporting that XML, which will give us access to some of the kinds of things that are missing from the DDR. But that's not ready yet. And then down here at the bottom, we've got unreferenced objects, indirection sources. So these are script steps and calculations that either form references or use references to items that can result in indirection. These are places where references to fields and tables and stuff like that can hide. Broken references. So remember when we looked at calculations for the entire layout? This is calculations for the entire system. Every single calculation string in the entire database is right here, 13,939 of them. And so we can look at things like, which is our longest calculation? The good news is this is in a custom function. All comment. So here's a fun one. Have you ever noticed that if you're looking at the hide condition for, or you paste something from one place to another and the calculation breaks, FileMaker wraps the entire calculation in comment markers. I flag those for you, and that's these yellow ones. So this is a spot where a hide condition was commented out in this way. And so that may be a problem. This may be something you're expecting to work, and it's not working right now because the calculation isn't in the right context and needs to be repaired and uncommented. However, if you use the double forward slash to form a comment while you're trying to comment out some hide condition, FileMaker looks at that and goes, well, that's not a valid calculation. I bet you wanted that to be a string, and so wraps it in double quotes. Now follow along with me here. I'm looking at a hide condition, and I commented the calculation out, which means it should always be false. But FileMaker wrapped it in double quotes, which means it's a string, which means it's always true. So FileMaker is actually explicitly reversing your logical intention. And so this part here, the red symbol, is looking for things that are in one big comment that is wrapped in double quotes. Now, there are valid reasons to have a calculation that does that if you're constructing a JavaScript page calculatorily or something like that. But odds are, if it's in your FileMaker system, this is something you didn't intend to have happen, and it's going to have some really weird behaviors for you. Here's every single layout object in the entire system. So if you're looking for that spot where somebody stuck 1 pixel by 1 pixel web viewers on every single layout so they could track where everybody was going and what everybody was doing, go here, filter for the web viewers, flip through them until you can find the ones that are the right size, and now you know what layouts they're on and approximately where they are on the overall layout of objects. Top call stats I'm not going to get into. If you want to know more about that, you can come to office hours that I do every Thursday at 4 Eastern. Run a search for FMPerception office hours on Google, and it'll take you right to the page. Last thing I'm really going to talk about here is the report card. The report card was designed out of my own experience as a FileMaker consultant. And it was kind of built around this use case. I'm about to sit down with a brand new customer in 10 minutes. And I've never seen their system before. But in preparation for this meeting, I got them to send me a DDR so I can see what's going on. What are the numbers? What's the information that I need to see to figure out what's going on in this system? Now, this is in the very bottom of the slower queries section. And the reason is that it's running every single query above it and aggregating all the data. So it takes a couple seconds. And on a humongous system, it'll take more than a couple of seconds. But it will get you an answer in a second, in a bit. Come on. And So again, this is just the information that I wanted to see. Things that are going to be hints. Now, it's called a report card, but I'm not giving grades because it's too hard to tell what's really good. Like repeating fields. We should never, ever use repeating fields, except for the times that repeating fields are absolutely the right solution to a particular problem. I can't see repeating fields and go, nah, thumbs down, you're out. It doesn't work. So, but I can look at things like how many tables are in this system? How many fields? What's the averaged count of fields per table? If I'm seeing 350 fields per table, that tells me something about how this system was built. Maybe something about its age, certainly something about the kind of design work that went into it. How many table occurrences per table? You know, there's no threshold where you cross the line and suddenly, ooh, it's bad. But if that number gets too high, I'm going to start wanting to have a conversation with them about how this thing was built. Are any of their fields serialized? Are they using global fields? Are they using container fields? Repeating fields, indexed fields, calculated, unstored versus stored calculations. All of these things give us hints about what's going on. Are they doing lookup? Are they doing validation? I like looking out for validation because it's one of those things that is really powerful and can totally break the UX of a system when users are constantly being stopped and told you haven't filled everything in, and maybe the field that they need to fill in isn't on the current layout, that kind of thing. If that validated fields count gets too high, I start getting concerned, unless they've got a very, very specific business use for it. Layouts, you know, which ones are visible in the sidebar? Layout objects with quick find on, layout objects with local CSS. So they had a style applied, but then had the style overridden in some way. How many total CSS nodes are actually overridden? How many properties got overridden across all layout objects? This tells me there's an opportunity here to optimize some of these layouts for performance. So on and on. Let me go for a good one here. Global variables. So we saw before the global variables list. And by the way, all of these things are clickable. I can click on it and drill in. It can be used as a navigation start point. But if I go here and look at these global variables, this was something that Todd Geist asked for. So I've got 97 global variables, but those global variables actually touch 1,400 different objects in the database. 395 scripts read from or write to global variables. 50% of the scripts, which means before I can edit this customer's scripts, I have to first understand their global variable system. What are they using those global variables for? Because if I start making scripts for this system, I may not respect the other layers that they've placed on it. So wanted to kind of get a sense for this. It's got a pretty significant impact in layout objects, though not huge. Couple small custom functions, not a big problem. And I know that none of the, the very small impact on fields. So they're mostly using it in scripts. Great. Now I know I'm not going to put a foot wrong. And I know that my estimate for doing script editing for this customer has got to go up a little bit because it's going to be a little more complicated. It's going to take me a little longer to make sure I'm doing it right. That kind of thing. So this is what the report card is here for. If you want to save this, stick it in version control, print it out, whatever like that, you can export the whole block as a big chunk of HTML, open it in a browser, email it to somebody, whatever. If you email it to somebody and they open it, the click links don't work, but all the tooltips and numbers still do. It's all one big chunk. So that's 0 to say 55 in FMPerception. There is a fully functional 14-day trial that is unlocked, available on the Geist site. The easiest way to get there is FMPerception.com. It's available for Mac and Windows. After those 14 days are up, you can purchase, and it runs, the licensing is purchase with support. So with your purchase, you get that version and any version released in the next 12 months included. And at the end of those 12 months, you pay half the license cost and you get another 12 months. And if you allow your license to, or your support to expire, you can continue using any version that was released before your support expired. So it's not subscription, it's purchase with support. Now, one of the cool things about that is your support is very shortly going to include FMComparison. And FMComparison is a completely different tool. It is included with FMPerception, and it allows you to take two versions of a database, compare them, find out how they're different. It uses the XML v2, so the save a copy as XML. It requires that XML to have been exported from FileMaker 19 or higher. That XML is a moving target. They're constantly changing it. There were big changes between 18 and 19 that made this kind of tool possible. So it requires version 19. The software is in beta now, and if you are a licensed non-trial user of FMPerception, you can go download it at FMComparison.com, give it a try today. But it is free now and will remain free for users of for users of FMPerception. Effectively, FMPerception is now a suite. So this one's a little tougher to sell. I don't know if you guys can see my finger quotes. Because as FileMaker developers, we're not used to working with diff tools. We're not used to having access to it. And so I kind of have to make the case for this a little bit. When you're dealing with version changes, you know, the FileMaker data migration tool is fantastic for that, but schema changes and layout changes aren't moved. It's just data. And being able to document what's happened, and even in particular, document to your users. If you've made 3 weeks worth of changes and have gone to your users and said, this is what changed in this version, do you remember everything you did in the 3 weeks? Are your invoice logs and things like that detailed enough that you can recover and rebuild a list of everything that changed between those two versions? Anytime that you're coordinating development between groups, so teams and shifts, contractors and junior devs, I've even seen it used to validate that the customer did not change the version after you deployed it, which is immensely helpful. So they say, we didn't change it, and you go, no, you changed these 3 scripts right here. Here's the login that did it. People doing vertical market apps, when you've got lots of versions that are all subtly different, being able to identify how this particular customer's version is different from this other customer is really important, particularly when you're doing a major version revision. And then regression diagnosis. FMComparison is Josh Ormond's first stop when he gets a bug report on a feature that's been working for the last 6 months. It's been working fine, no problems. He starts getting bug reports. It has to have been something in the last update. Has to. So he'll grab the 2 latest versions of the XML, one from the live and one from what live before they did the deployment, do the comparison, find which, you know, look from the 30 scripts that changed in the last week, identify the one where the problem is, and then go look at which stuff changed. And we'll get into there once we can see it. So why do you need a special app? There are lots of diff tools for text-based stuff, and the XML is text-based, right? So why can't we just use it? And the issue, there's a number. One is the actual sizes of the files. You know, if you're comparing 2 300 megabyte chunks of XML, most source code diff tools are going to croak. They'll just go, yeah, this is too big, not touching it. If you've changed a layout, or I'm sorry, a layout object on a layout, a diff tool that can handle the large text files will say, this line of code here changed. So the immediate next question that you have is, okay, what layout is that on? That may be 300 lines earlier in the XML. It may be 5,000 lines earlier in the XML, depending upon how many objects are on that layout. A diff tool is not going to give you the context information that you're going to need to deal with that. And when you're looking at objects in text, if I take a big chunk of text and move it 50 lines earlier in the file, most diff tools are going to say it was deleted from here and then new stuff was created over there. But that's not really what happened. We just grabbed 5 layout objects and sent them to the back of the layout. They weren't edited in any way. Nothing was created or deleted. We just moved them. And so FMComparison has an awareness of when the same object shifts its ordering and can describe it as an ordering shift rather than a add and delete. And when you wrap things in these text editors, so I take 10 fields and put them in a tab region, a text diffing process will see that as a greater indent. They're moved in because they're owned by a parent object that wraps them. And so every single one of those lines will have been edited. Well, in FileMaker terms, we didn't edit them at all. We just changed their containment. And so being able to handle these differences is really helpful. So I'm going to stop talking over slides, and we're going to go ahead and open it up. So here's FMComparison, and I start by selecting 2 files. Let's go ahead and pick that same kind of starting point. So here's an old version of FM starting point, and here's a newer version of FM starting point. Now I've got options here for things like what kind of stuff we want to compare. You know, if you just want to see the scripts, I can turn all these checkboxes off except for scripts, and that's all that it will spit out for you. But I want to see everything. Relevant changes allows you to say, yeah, you know, technically in diff terms, this object changed, but the nature of the way it changed, I don't care about. Don't flag it for me if that's the only thing that changed. And so in particular for this one, I'm going to say, I don't care if the UUID or these modification timestamps changed. I do care if the FileMaker ID changed. And I definitely care about these script comments and script whitespace. This stuff came out of conversations with users where we found that they generally broke or divided themselves into 2 camps. The first camp said, I care about every single little change anywhere in the database. If anybody was touching this, anybody was messing with it, I want to know. And the other camp said, I only ever care about functional changes. I'm using diff to help me debug. If a script added a line of white space, I don't care. I don't even care if somebody edited comments, deleted them, created them. Comments have no functional impact on the script. Throw it out. If that's all that changed in the script, don't tell me about it. And so that's what this stuff is for. I'll go ahead and save that. And then the linking rules have to do with how this version is based on the other version that you're comparing it to. And this page is far too complicated for the time I have available, but this is another good conversation topic to have at office hours if anybody wants to come there, or you can ask questions afterwards. So while I've been talking about this stuff, the XML was being basically parsed. So now it's ready to do the comparison based upon the settings that I've defined. So I say begin comparison, and it starts crunching. When this really slows down, it's doing layout objects, always. There we go. So I can now see, hey, we deleted 3 tables. So this is added, deleted, and edited. And hey, look, the new version allows font size shifts. So you can zoom in and out, make the text bigger. My eyes are starting to get to that point where I need everything to be a little bigger. So here's fields. And this is a new field, and this is every single property on the field. So if I wanted to go create this one from this map, I could set all the same settings. But if I go down here and find one of the edited ones, there's a lot of stuff here. Let me hide the non-changes. So all that changed was this went from no indexing to minimal indexing. Thanks. And so I can just kind of flip through these. Auto index was turned off. This one, oh, they changed the numbering system on the next serial value. This kind of stuff. Just being able to have these things flag and be right there. If I go to look at scripts, scroll way down. When they get two lines like this, it's because they were renamed. So both names are here, and both names are searchable from the filter, the old name and the new name. So I can, let's see if we can find one that actually has a change. Oh, well, these are all the renamed ones. Of course, okay, so here we go. So the target layout got shifted, and there's these two extra script steps to show hide menu bar, turn it on, and not lock it, and show hide toolbars. Oh, and here's some more stuff. So if you've got this script that sends email to a particular batch of users, and it's a 200-line script with tons of complicated logic, but between one version and the next, all that changed was 2 lines in the script. Being able to highlight those quickly and go, okay, if the script isn't working properly anymore, it was working, it's not now, it's got to be somewhere in these 2 lines. I don't have to worry about the rest of the script. I may decide to edit elsewhere, but it's only in these 2 lines that the script's functionality changed between these 2 versions. Now, there are certain things here, like this graph organization, script organization, layout organization. There is a diff tool in FMPerception, and it totally works, but it generates too much data. It's noisy all over the place. It flags every single change. And to reduce some of the noise, one of the things that we did for FMComparison was isolate functional changes from organizational changes. So looking at script organization, let me collapse this sidebar here. This is all of the scripts. And so now I can see, okay, this script got deleted from the list, and that's what's causing the ordering to change subtly. This one here. I had to
lock Cleo out. She was being impossible and clawing at my sweater.
So these arrows indicate kind of which way the thing moved. So this 008 moved from position 13 to position 11. So if you are the kind of developer that cares very much that your scripts are in an exact particular order when you deliver them to a customer, now you can make sure that any migrations were properly organized. If on the other hand, you don't care, you can completely ignore the fact that this, oops, here we go, that this script organization section exists at all, and this is where the script functionality is impacted. You just ignore that. One of the nice things that we got in the new XML that wasn't there in the DDR is the actual Cartesian coordinates for each of the table occurrences on the relationship graph. And so now I can say, I can actually do a side-by-side graphical visual comparison of the relationship graph and say, okay, because I clicked on, say, this one right here, it'll align them in the same position on both sides. And so looking at the frame reference of this section here got deleted, this note and these table occurrences and relationships. And so all of these things moved up. And so I can basically use that classic Google Maps style navigation to look at the whole thing, see where new things popped in. Probably hard to see that because it's small, but that's a new thing. So they're all color coded, and I'm very happy with it. I'm really looking forward to when I can redo FMPerception this way with this information, because there's some cool stuff I want to show. But if you're somebody who doesn't care if the table occurrences are properly aligned, ignore the graph organization section. You'll get all the functionality changes that you care about in table occurrence edits and relationship edits. All of these changes just became irrelevant to you. You never have to look at them. So that's how that stuff breaks up. So once again, FMComparison is included with the purchase of FMPerception. It is currently in beta, and it's going to be releasing real soon. The current stuff that we're working on is Joe Simpson, the guy who's been doing the UI design for all of this, has been having a lot of carpal tunnel issues. And it's mostly being driven by mouse use. So one of the things he insisted on was the entire UI should be key navigable. So you can drive through all of this entirely on the keyboard without having to mouse, but you can still mouse if you like. There's also a couple aspects of layout objects that I still have to properly describe in the sidebar. So if I look at a layout, find one about here. So here are all the layout objects. Let's see if we can find something that's got something juicy. Here we go. This one was moved. Top and bottom, it was made taller and moved up. Anyway, there are a couple of properties of layout objects that I'm not describing yet, like conditional formatting. Turns out diffing conditional formatting is rather complicated. And tooltips, that's another one. But regardless, most of the stuff is here. And honestly, like right here, this one has 137 changed layout objects. My guess is you're going to migrate these changes from system A to system B by selecting all the objects on the layout, hitting copy and pasting them in the other system and fixing the tab order. That's how you're going to migrate those changes. You're not going to migrate them one at a time, but I'm going to make sure that the sidebar has complete descriptions of the stuff. So, I think that pretty much covers it. Oh, wait, I had one little bit here. Happy discount code. So, if you want to check out FMPerception, go ahead and download the trial. Play with it on your XML. Make sure it works. If you have any problems, drop us a line, support@proofgeist.com. There's actually a menu option in FMPerception to send a support request. But once you've tried it out and you're happy, here's a 20% off discount code. And it'll also work for other Proofgeist software products. So, yeah. I don't know exactly when the expiration date for this code is, so I wouldn't necessarily wait the full 2-week trial before going ahead and buying, but that's up to you. Yeah, so that pretty much covers it. Questions, problems, concerns? Happy joy noise.
We're unmuted now, so if anybody has any questions from here.
Dave, I just want to say thank you. This is Beth Latta from IT Solutions. We use your product and it makes my life so much easier. There isn't a day I don't run something through FMPerception. So thank you. And I can't wait to try out the comparison tool.
Fantastic. I'm always happy to hear that kind of feedback. Of course, I like the other kind of feedback too, but that kind's the best.
Reminds me of the time that I saw the inimitable Graham Chapman from Monty Python speak at CMU. It's about 1988, and he got up on stage and immediately said, "Thank you. I would now like to request 30 seconds of abuse." And people threw things at him. He was timing the whole thing, and then said, "Thank you very much. That's quite enough abuse." But yeah, you have a great product.
Thanks.
I'm old. And I come from a design standpoint, and I'm always like, all the things you went through are driving me nuts.
Mhm.
I never know which layout, like which version of which layout one button's going to or whatever. So this is really cool. Thank you.
No, like I said at the very beginning, I started as a FileMaker developer in '94. I know pretty well what a lot of the challenges are that people are facing. And as they bump into new challenges, we add new features. So. Anybody else?
Well, I would just like to echo Beth's comment. I mean, I don't use it every day, but when I need it, it's nice to have in the toolbox for sure.
I like all the kind of metadata stuff. Comparing two versions of a program, or hunting for bugs, or hunting for why one version broke in one place. The worst way to do it is to just grovel through the code, and that's not the way to think about it. And yet, these tools, among the tool things they do, it's also sort of specifies what's good programming philosophy and what's good programming organization, which I think is along the lines of all your higher level things. So you could think about things in a reasonable way and have some chance of proceeding in some sort of hierarchical or logical order to find things. And I find that really impressive. And I'm not likely to use it unless you do it for Python also, which you could. This is pretty language independent, you know.
Conceptually, yes. Practically,
I know.
Yeah.
The details are all probably depending on the machine implementation as well as the language.
Yeah.
Anyway, I enjoyed this thoroughly. I'm really impressed. Sounds like it's a good group and a group that's fun to work with, that you work with to do this.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, and I am going to add this to my toolbox.
Okay, that's actually my favorite kind of comment.
Okay.
Add me too. I like it.
Kind of like that X-ray compared to an MRI. You get to see the details behind it.
Yeah, I'm really impressed at how much detail you went into drilling down to otherwise arbitrary sorts or things that you're looking for. And it's really, it's like you opened up the whole system in a user manual, not a user manual, but like a schematic. Very cool.
Any other questions or comments for Dave? Does anybody have one more thing that they just want to ask of the group?
Yeah, I do, and I'm embarrassed. But I've been like working on, as a few of you know, that we are acquiring a company in Virginia. So we did move to a cloud server, and I am in the process of I exported all the data from their system, trying to put it in ours. And my brain, I have brain fog, and I have, they have, for those that don't know, I'm in the plumbing business, commercial plumbing business. And so we use a lot of keywords to help cross-reference like different model numbers, manufacturer names, things like that. And the way that the system they use, which is Sage, their keywords are one record per keyword. And in our system, it is all the keywords just delimited by a space, or I'm sorry, by a return. And I feel stupid asking this because for the life of me, I'm not getting the loop command correctly or what I should be doing. So I could take their keywords. I want to go through all their keywords, and then they have each record is their item number plus their keyword. So I wanted to go through all their records and per an item number, throw it into one field, and then go through. Am I making sense?
Are they already related, Kim?
I'm not.
So do you have a relationship to all of the keywords for a particular product?
Well, it's just raw data, so I just put it in a table. But
Right, but does it have? But is the raw data linked in some way so that there's a keyword and then whatever part number or whatever product, or you know what I mean?
maybe that's what I should do. Like, okay, so the data I got from them say it's just a part number field and a keyword.
Right, and so every place that same part number
Yes.
is used, you want just one field that is return delimited in the part table. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, you can use a relationship from that list to your part number and then use the list function itself to that related keyword field, and it'll automatically list all of those keywords in return delimited.
Okay, I was looking at list, and maybe that the issue then is I didn't have a relationship.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'll try that. I understand. I've been working long hours and my brain is not functioning very well right now.
Now, if they happen to have duplicates for some reason, the keyword is used more than once,
Yes.
you'll get duplicates too, because it just takes that list.
Okay.
But you can deal with it later.
Okay.
But there is a unique values function now if you're using 19. I don't know if that came out in 18, but there is actually unique values.
Right.
So you can apply that as well. So if you end up with duplicates, it will take care of that automatically.
Okay. I'll look that. I am using 19. Okay. I'll look that up. Thank you both.
Anyone else?
I don't remember if I've brought this up before, but I will throw this out there. Does anybody use a batch script of some kind to restart, to safely shut down a FileMaker server before you reboot the machine so that you don't corrupt your 40 gig databases? One of the servers for one of our clients have. It is a Windows that all the instances where we're interested in doing it are Windows servers. But there's a lot of different, I mean, I've Googled it as well. I just was curious to see if any advice, from doing it personally. I know, is Steven still on? He's gonna say Wim has articles out there about that, and I've read them and I agree. But he also points out all the dangerous things of this process. So right now we're having our data center manually shut down FileMaker servers before doing patches and rebooting. But it would be nice to not have to manually do it, you know, to be able to script it. But I don't know that there's a definitive best practice.
We're doing some stuff internally, but it was for like a FileMaker Pro machine running on Windows. It was kind of like a robot and doing some other stuff. So it's connecting to a server. So we just kill the process and reboot the machine, and then it automatically, you know, reconnects. So we didn't have to do anything gracefully.
Yeah, ours was because all of the units were correct, and then you know every version it comes. And so the fix was that matched with so that the scheduler could get it start. It's for patches. That's specifically break down a certain time. Right, so that like the Windows patches and things like that can get done. Let me know what you say.
Once again, we go back to Windows being problem.
Anything else? Yes, I don't have a question, but just have a little bit of knowledge that I gained this week, just to throw out there that might be helpful. That there is a command line command if you don't want to try to find the control panel, figure out what version of Windows you're running on your server. When tech support asks you what version of Windows you're running FileMaker server on, if you go into command line and type WINVER, WinVer, then it actually will pull up the dialog box that says this is your version of Windows and the build number and all that. WinVer, yeah, or Windows version.
Yeah,
All one
I
word.
heard that a couple years ago.
So that was the one thing, and then the other thing in this conversation I had with the one engineer, because there was Windows Server like 2016, and it was like the standard version. I know most of my experience has been with like the Windows Data Center version of FileMaker, Windows Server, and I guess FileMaker supports both, but most of their testing, or actually I think all of their testing is done on the standard or the enterprise version, not Data Center. So there shouldn't be any differences, but if you ever run into a situation where it's on Data Center and things are a little squirrely, that's just something to at least consider. Because it was, like I said, there shouldn't be any reason why it doesn't work the same, but it was not officially fully tested. So, anyone else?
I can't believe you haven't commented on Catholic Health in Space. Let's just put that out there.
Actually, I did get something. A good friend of mine from college who was a big Star Trek fan. He had posted that he had been given, he had received an invitation to join William Shatner in space, but they'd given him a red shirt to wear. So, I got so busy, I did not get my own slides together, so I can give you the results of the survey, at least the top ones. I think I remember. But the one question we asked was about, how often to use JSON, and it was, I think, the 50% of the people that responded said, now that I have native functions, I can't imagine building a solution without it. There was a smattering for the other options. As far as learning FileMaker, the majority said, actually I think it was 100% because it was a check all that apply, was webinars, whether they're provided by Claris or somebody else. And then the other one that was 100% was talking to a coworker, colleague, mentor, which we're all doing right now. So those were the two there. And then there was a few votes for everybody, but again, I think it was a 50% majority said that they're Leonard Hofstadter on Big Bang Theory. So All right, our next meeting, we should be back onto our regular first Wednesday of the month, which will be November 3rd. As long as everybody is satisfied with the audio and video performance of being both in person and online, we will do the same thing next month, just without the ice cream cake.
But we may have pie.
But we may have pie.
Pecan pie, please.
All right. I guess just in closing, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And does anybody have any other final thoughts before we end the Zoom portion of the meeting? I did find out this week what day of the week chickens hate the most. Of course, it is Friday.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you all very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Bye.